Hello, everybody. I'm here today with Bill Margolis. Thanks for tuning into my station. On my channel here, I like to talk about and discuss all the various aspects of sexual addiction, sexual exploitation, recovery, and all of the different people that work in the different fields around this area. I'm very happy to be here today with Bill. He's the co-founder and executive director of educational awareness programs and is honorably retired from the Los Angeles Police Department after serving for 35 years. During his career with the LAPD, Bill worked a variety of assignments that included in Hollywood and Van Nuys, uniform patrol, the jail, foot patrol, and specialized vice assignments. Bill was ultimately promoted to detective and assigned to Administrative Vice Division, which was responsible for investigations related to organized crime, conducting major vice investigations such as high-profile prostitution rings, massage parlors, bookmaking organizations, and pornography. Bill is a recognized expert in the field of vice operations and participated as an instructor in their vice operations school for approximately 18 years. This one-week school is taught to officers assigned to vice bureaus throughout the state of California. During the last 10 years of his career, Bill conducted training and worked with the individual vice units throughout the city, provided functional supervision and training of undercover prostitution enforcement stings throughout LA. Prior to leaving the department, he teamed up with the LA City Attorney's Office and developed the Prostitution Diversion program, which will be the main focus of our talk today. The program quickly gained approval from the police chief, command staff, senior vice detectives, and vice officers. As a result of the team effort and collaboration and the Los Angeles Police Department, Los Angeles City Attorney's Office, and educational awareness programs, the Prostitution Diversion program became a model of success. Bill graduated from the Los Angeles Valley College with an Associate of Arts degree in Police Science, attended California State University at Northridge prior to entering the Los Angeles Police Department Academy in 1973. He's currently employed by Major League Baseball as a lead authenticator at Dodger Stadium. He works directly for the Commissioner of Baseball. Thanks, Bill, for being here with me today. I'm so glad to have you.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for the invitation.
Yeah, so let's get right to it, Bill. My first question is, you worked for 35 years as a police officer and then a detective in administrative vice, and that you were involved in working organized crime, human trafficking, prostitution rings, massage parlors, and pornography. So just give us a bit of a background before we get into the diversion program, specifically about the type of work you did in those years and what drew you to that.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul. After joining the police department at the age of 22, I worked a variety of assignments, including patrol for the first 7 years of my career. And after the 7 years, I decided that I wanted to become a detective. On the LAPD, we have countless positions for detective, whether it's a robbery detective, a burglary detective, auto theft detectives,
Okay.
vice detectives. So when I was working the area, which LAPD has 21 different areas, 21 different police stations around the city of Los Angeles.
Okay.
Each one of those area police stations has a small group of officers, anywhere from 4 to 10, that handle vice investigations for that particular area, which include street walking prostitution, sales of alcohol to minors, bookmaking, lewd conduct in bathrooms in the public parks, different types of crimes that affect that immediate neighborhood. So I developed an interest in vice investigations, and then I was promoted to detective, and they have a downtown vice division of about 45 detectives, and I was able to get into that division, which handled the major bookmaking, prostitution, pornography investigations, and it also included an abatement unit, which went after different types of properties,
Mhm.
nothing but fronts for criminal activity, such
Mhm.
as massage parlors.
Mhm.
I became the department expert in massage parlors. My partner and I closed down 65 illegal massage parlors throughout the city, which were
Mhm.
nothing but fronts for prostitution. I also worked the prostitution section where we arrested pimps, and we did investigations on escort services. Also, I was the department expert in illegal bookmaking, which is betting organizations involving organized crime.
Mhm.
So after doing those investigations, then I was promoted to a detective 3, which is the highest ranking detective and one of the most experienced detectives in the Los Angeles Police Department regarding vice investigations. And my job title switched to going around to those 21 different areas within the city that
Yep.
had small vice units and providing functional supervision in those areas, helping those young vice officers conduct their investigations. So I would critique them, I would do audits, and I would provide training and functional supervision. And a big part of that was putting on the undercover sting operations, where we would put out a female officer dressed as a street walking prostitute. And I'll use the word street walking prostitute, but I knew while working the area vice in Van Nuys, I knew that those young ladies were actual victims. There was no question in my mind.
In what way, Bill? Victims of what?
Well, Paul, I'll tell you something. As a young vice officer arresting those young ladies off the streets and talking with them and questioning them, there was a common thread of abuse, whether mental, physical, sexual abuse
Mhm.
in the family unit, along with alcohol and substance abuse issues.
Mhm.
All of those girls, young girls, most girls start out between 13 and 16 in
Wow, that's young.
prostitution. We even arrested, a 10-year-old that was working the streets. But seeing those young ladies having to sell their bodies in order to have shelter or put food in their stomach was extremely difficult to deal with for me personally.
Yes.
So anyway, getting back to the last 10 years of my career, I would go around to those area vice units and do the training and supervision. And a big part of that was in order for an area to do an undercover sting operation where they were going to put a female officer out on the street posing as a street walking prostitute, I had to be there and I had to provide the roll call training for the officers to discuss officer safety issues and legal issues, what the young ladies can say, what they can't say.
Okay.
So we would do the roll calls, and then I would go out and I would observe the operation, which entailed about anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10 officers to put on these undercover sting operations. And I would sit back at the command post and I would see the guys coming back in handcuffs that propositioned the undercover female officer, and they were under arrest for prostitution. And I would look at these guys, Paul, and I did this year after year after year.
Mhm.
And a lot of the guys were extremely remorseful, extremely sorry, very scared. A lot of them, you could see their life just passed right in front of them. They got a wife and 3 kids at home. They're a pillar in the community. And I used to sit there, Paul, and I used to think to myself, if these guys only knew what I know about street walking prostitution and the dangers and how they're risking their life, they're risking their health, they're risking their family's health, they're risking their reputation, they're risking their job, they're risking their freedom, and a lot of the men are risking their whole families.
They're risking everything, really.
That's correct. So
Yeah.
I used to think that, first of all, we're never going to arrest our way out of this.
Right.
And by arresting these men and seeing them go to court, getting a fine, placed on 3-year summary probation, maybe doing a little community service, and having a conviction for prostitution on their record for the rest of their life, I thought there had to be a better way to go. So
Right.
I felt that an educational program for first-time offenders would be the proper way to go.
Mm.
And after discussing it with my coworkers who were top-notch vice detectives, 20, 30, even a couple of guys with 40 years of experience,
Hmm.
all felt that an educational program for first-time offenders with no violence in their background, no
No criminal past.
no criminal past, no domestic violence in their background,
Oh, interesting.
prime candidates for an educational program.
Hmm.
So I ran it by the chain of command on the police department,
Okay.
and everybody from the chief on down felt that it was a good idea to try to develop some type of an educational program. So
Were you surprised at the time how it sounds like it was easy to sell the idea to them? Were you surprised that they just were like, "Hey, Bill, that's a great idea"?
that's a great question, and you know why they not only did the field officers, the line vice officers who were actually working the streets believed that that was the way to go, but the way I sold it to the command staff on the police department was this, Paul. So we arrest Mr. Jones for soliciting our undercover female officer. Mr. Jones is a pillar in the community, a well-respected churchgoer. He's got a wife and 3 kids. He's never been arrested. He's never had contact with the police.
Right.
And Mr. Jones goes to court. So his attorney or public defender, when Mr. Jones wants to either continue the case or maybe take some type of a trial,
Hmm.
the city attorney's office would subpoena 6 or 7 police officers who had to come in on their day off or come in off hours, sit in court all day, 8 hours, and then the case would be continued again.
Which they probably hated doing, right?
The cases were continued because there wasn't enough court space available, whatever the case may be.
Mm.
That cost the Los Angeles Police Department and the citizens of Los Angeles, for one arrest of Mr. Jones, tens of thousands of dollars, who's going to get a misdemeanor on his record. So the command staff saw the writing on the wall that maybe an educational program was the way to go. And since I met up with a young city attorney in the Los Angeles City Attorney's office, from the day we met, after 2.5 years of dealing with the police department, the command staff, the public defender's office, the courts, the judges, the city attorney's office, in 2008, we had our first program, and we had 4 men sitting in the front row. And our program takes 12 to 15 professional people to put that program on.
Right.
Now, since 2008, we've been going, it'll be coming up on 15 years.
Okay.
At over 4,000 men go through the program.
Wow.
So I
From
can
4
tell
to
you,
4,000.
Yes, over 4,000. And I can tell you that the program has expanded to different counties in Southern California. And the LA City Attorney's Office tracked the first 1,100 men for over 5 years.
Okay,
And they found that 4 men who went to our diversion program were rearrested during that period of time for prostitution-related offenses. And since that time, they no longer track the men.
wow, that recidivism rate is unheard of. That's less than 1%.
Yeah, but I will tell you this, it's difficult to really gauge the recidivism rate. I know for the men coming through our program, just from the feedback that I get from the men themselves, we do anonymous critiques at the end of our program. And I've had countless conversations with thousands of guys. It's difficult to gauge an accurate recidivism rate, but I think that it is quite low if they go through our program.
Right. Well, let's say we only know 4, but the actual number is 100 or 200. Anything like any program that has a recidivism rate of less 10% or less would be considered a roaring success, would it not? In any
I
other
would,
department?
Paul, I'll tell you something. I think the issue here with prostitution in general in the United States of America, the real issue is, unfortunately, most men in the American society believe that prostitution is a victimless crime.
Mm,
Most men think that she wants the money, I want the sex, I get the sex, give her the money, she goes her way, I go my way, and no one is hurt.
no one's hurt.
And once they go through our program, they understand that that is not reality.
Right.
First of all, they're sitting in our program and they're paying their hard-earned money to come to our program. They've hired an attorney. They've jeopardized their family. Victim. Not to mention, most men don't realize that the young ladies working the streets are conducting sex acts with 10 men a night, 60 men a week, 240 men a month, and over 3,000 a year. Most men, and that's a minimum, most men don't understand that. But once they come to the program and we talk about the dangers, not to mention how some men have lost their lives engaging in prostitution, and many, many other stories that I tell them throughout the day. And then our other professionals come on, and a lot of probably the most important aspect of our program is along the lines of what you do, is the sexual addiction portion is the most powerful. We have Dr. Pavlo, who's a PhD, talks about sexual addiction. And then we have 4 professionals who have lost their families and their careers because of their sexual addiction come in and talk. And they deliver extremely powerful presentations.
Sure. Well, it's their personal story, so it really would have that feel of authenticity to it. I imagine you're not just, when those guys sit there and they hear those guys telling their story, they're like, you were in my shoes and this is what happened to you, and you're not making this up. No one's paying you to be here, or maybe they are, but it's not that much money.
They're there on their own volition.
And it's an eye opener, and it's interesting, like what you say about the perceptions, but also, working with addicts, I can tell you that and it's like engaging in any drug or substance, Bill, but there's this thing called an altered state. We call it an altered state. And it's where there's a certain point in the cycle where the brain chemistry starts to change. So you're logging onto the computer to look at porn, you're going on the chat room, you're going on the dating app, you're driving down the street looking for that woman to pick up. And because I talked to a lot of wives of addicts too, and they're like, like, don't, how can you do this? How can you say you love me? And I say, listen, it's not about you, and it never was about you. And sorry, but he's not even actually thinking about you, because this thing called an altered state means that all of the reasoning and rationality has just gone out the window, and they're just hyper focused. They're caught up in this addiction, and they're hyper focused on getting the reward. That's what it is. And then what you're seeing is when the cuffs are on, the fog lifting, the holy shit moment where they're snapped back into reality,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. And Paul, let me just interject real quick, Paul, and then I'll let you go on. I'm sorry.
Well, I was done. I just wanted to mention that, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Our SAA members have been with us, most of them for many, many years, and they're professionals. We have a gentleman from Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He's a rocket scientist. We have a
I
top.
love it. Literally a rocket scientist.
Yes, we have a Hollywood executive from one of the biggest movie studios in Hollywood. We have a UCLA law graduate that has one of the biggest law firms in Los Angeles. And we have a gentleman who was a top neck surgeon at one of the largest hospitals in New York,
Okay.
and experts in his field.
Okay.
And he's watching porn in between patients.
Yeah.
He would set up his shrine. He have to do neck surgery early in the morning. He said he would watch porn for 2 hours. Before he knew it, the sun was coming up. He had to go do a neck surgery. They caught him with porn on his laptop that included some children.
Okay.
Lost his family, lost his license as a physician.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow. And
Our
he's
guy.
one of the guys, like he's one of the guys that comes in and speaks to the Johns.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dr. Pavlo does a 1 hour presentation on sexual addiction. Very
So,
good.
so yeah, Bill, once you break it down, like, okay, what is a John school? Imagine someone's watching this, they've never heard of this. They don't know what a John school is. So break it down for us. I think you're about to anyway, but just sort of who's there and the different parts to it and stuff. Let's do that.
Sure. Okay. We prior to COVID, we did everything live and in person.
Sure.
So they would come in from all over. We would do registration. And then I would start out with a 45-minute introduction, talking about myself and talking about the dangers and how they're risking different things. And then I would tell the different stories that would shock some of the guys. Then we would have a law enforcement officer, Rick Shields, retired 30-year lieutenant,
Okay.
two-time Purple Heart recipient. And he would talk about the police perspective, why we do what we do and how we do it, basically. Then we would have a city attorney come in and talk about the penalties going forward if they were to reoffend.
Okay.
Then we would have our we would have a program graduate, a young man, how he almost killed himself, how he almost lost his family, how he came to the program and decided that, maybe he might have some issues, and he went to therapy and helped him, and is now back with his family, working 2 jobs, and credits our program for saving his life.
Wow, it's powerful.
Yes, it is. It's very powerful. And
that is.
Then we have Wendy Arnold and some Los Angeles County health officials, all with master's degree in public health, and they do an hour presentation on HIV/AIDS.
Oh,
and
wow.
Wendy Arnold has her own nonprofit organization that teaches adolescents regarding sexually transmitted disease and HIV. And Wendy Arnold has taught in over 28 countries, many in Africa, on HIV prevention. Then we have another LA County health official, master degree in public health, 15 years of experience, expert in HIV and sexually transmitted diseases. They come on and talk for an hour on sexually transmitted diseases. And some feedback that I have received in the past from the guys, that once they see some of the videos of these sexually transmitted diseases, that's right before we break for lunch. A lot of the guys lose their appetite and don't want to eat lunch. So then we come back.
Sorry, can I have a question? Can I have a quick question, Bill?
Sure.
So when you say, 10 men a night, 240 a month, 3,000 a year, there's a lot of unprotected sex going along. Is it safe to say that STDs and STI are rampant, like not just among the women, but among the Johns as well? Like, how prevalent of an issue is this?
That's a great question, Paul. Let me give you an answer.
Okay.
Every time I do a program, I hold up the latest newspaper, because we're doing Zoom right now because of COVID, that talks about sexually transmitted diseases at the highest rate ever. It's an epidemic in the United States, and Southern California is leading the way.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
rampant, and it's they've been finding more syphilis cases in newborn babies than they have in the past, and it just goes on and on from there. So yes.
Well, and I've also had clients that have had a scare. At least I don't know if any actually had an STD, but they had a scare, and then of course they're also having sex with their wife, and there's nothing much that will break up a marriage faster than a guy getting an STD from a prostitute and come back and then giving it to his wife. That does not go over very well.
Yeah, and you know something, Paul, when I was actually working the streets and arresting these young ladies, back in the 70s and 80s, we had quite a crack cocaine issue in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these girls, really, all they had was the clothes on their back, and they couldn't get the crack cocaine fast enough.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of these young ladies were ill with hepatitis, syphilis, gonorrhea, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, Paul, that most men in the American society would not believe or even think about the simple fact that when we would arrest the young lady off the street and put her in handcuffs, we would confiscate whatever property they had. They might have a small purse, and inside the small purse, they might have condoms. And further review of those condoms, I can't tell you how many times I found little pinholes in those condoms, right through the wrapper. Do you know why, Paul, there was pinholes in those condoms?
Someone doesn't want them to work, I guess, but what's the reason?
Well, that young lady is ill. She knows she's sick, and she's tired of being choked and beaten and robbed and having her hair pulled. And so she's going to show them. Not to mention, when I was working that area vice, when I was a young vice officer, we would arrest Miss Smith, and we would take her to the local female jail. And at that time, they were doing HIV testing.
Mm-hmm.
And they would send the results back to the vice unit that arrested the young lady and let us know if the young lady was positive or negative.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times when Miss Smith was released after 5 days, she's back out on the street, knowing she's HIV positive, working the streets. And then here comes Mr. McMullen, and Mr. McMullen says, "I'll pay extra not to have not to wear a condom." Yeah. Okay, so then we do the STD.
Right. Well, that's a good little insider story insight there. I really appreciate that, because that's the kind of thing you don't see unless you're there working it, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the reality, isn't it? It's the reality of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And not to mention, I tell you, a lot of guys would never think about the fact that they would pick up a young lady and they want oral sex. So they park behind that closed business at 2:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
And this young lady happened to secrete a razor blade in her mouth. And if things went sideways for her, that razor blade was used to, cut the man's penis or testicles. And she was able to do that to 4 unsuspecting men until we finally caught up with her. So there are
And
things.
this is her like in self-defense, like they're getting abusive, and this is just her way of fighting them off. And
Exactly. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
it's awful. That's
Yeah.
awful. It's horrible.
Yes, I would think so.
For everybody. It's horrible for everybody. Yeah.
So
Wow.
just stories like that along the lines where the average guy is not thinking like that.
Yeah.
So then, Paul, we would come
Okay,
back.
back to the John School. Yeah.
Dr. Pavlo would do her hour presentation on sexual addiction. We'd have our 4 guest speakers, and they'd come up and say, "Hi, my name is Juan. I'm a sex addict."
Right.
And once somebody stands up in front of a group and puts out, "Hi, my name is Juan. I'm a sex addict,"
Yeah.
that gets people's attention.
Yeah, you got my attention.
Yeah. And you could hear a pin drop when these guys get up and talk.
Right.
So you can literally look at the guys sitting in the audience, whether there's 30 or 40 of them, and you could just sort of tell that some of the guys are relating to the story.
Sure.
Now, what we do then is, after our 4 guys talk for about 10 or 15 minutes each, we dismiss the class and they go into a back room. The entire class goes back there to talk to the SAA guys. None of my staff are back there. And they can either stay there, or they can go on a 15-minute break or 20-minute break, or they can spend 15, 20 minutes talking personally with the guys. And right at the exit, I have a podium, and I put a list of Sex Addicts Anonymous handouts that give all the locations, dates, and times of SAA meetings around Los Angeles County.
Right.
And I have found, Paul, that over the years of doing that about 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 6 guys that come to our program take one of those handouts.
Right. Yeah, I always recommend my clients go to a group. The one here is the SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, is the stronger group here. We have SA as well, and it's very, very helpful for many of them. It's not for everybody, not everyone stays with it, but for guys that really stay and work it and get a sponsor and do the steps, it's life changing.
Yes, it is.
I've seen it over and over. It's life changing.
Absolutely.
So that's great that you're giving the resources. Like, what I love about that is that you're, like, the John School isn't, I'm a cop and I'm going to scold you for 3 hours about how stupid you are. Like, it's taking all these people from all these perspectives, and it's bringing the shared humanity of it together. Like, even with the guys that are recovering, and the guys like yourself that pay I know that you pay a price for the work that you do, just getting down in the muck like that. It must take a toll on you. Maybe that's a conversation, I'll admit, I'm curious, like, how you manage that personally and emotionally and everything, but that's a conversation for another day, because we want to talk about the John School. But everyone's paid a price, but their shared humanity is, people like yourself had the vision to say, what if we focused on the shared humanity of the people that have been where you are and are now in a better place and can tell their stories. And let's get into because I think that's the heart of it. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's the heart of it. But then we're going to bring in the education and the information and the statistics and all that too. We're going to bring that in around that. And then also, I want to hear about, I know you bring in former prostituted women too. So I want to hear about that and the impact on that. So just my thoughts. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, Paul, you hit the nail on the head. Believe me. When I do my introduction, I set the tone,
Mm,
and it's very simple. I've learned over the years. When we first started out, I had a partner that was retired, another retired lieutenant, had his own training company, really sharp guy, but he was a pretty hardcore guy. So our presentation together was sort of like a good cop, bad cop.
okay, he was the
But
bad cop. You're the
yeah,
good cop.
but it really ruffled the feathers, and it was self-defeating. And eventually, my partner, he had health issues, so he turned over everything to me. But
Oh, I see. Okay.
setting the tone with these guys, and I basically tell them, and I make a very strong point, gentlemen. I'm not here to tell you how to run your life. The cops aren't here how to tell you what to do.
Mhm.
I'm just here to share my experiences. And if we can give you information that you can make better decisions moving forward, that's what it's all about. This program is not about us. I can
Mhm.
barely live my own life, let alone try to tell you how to live your life.
Right.
Uh, really,
Yeah. Well,
that's the
if you
tone,
come off with the self-righteous attitude, you're going to lose the audience anyways, right?
guaranteed. Especially these guys, because Paul, I went to two diversion programs prior to starting ours. I won't name the cities which provided those programs.
Hey, I'm in Canada. I don't care. You can name them if you want.
Yeah, I know, but my parents taught me if you don't have anything good to say about
They don't
someone,
say anything at all. Okay.
yeah. But they were uh, they were appalling. Actually, the guys were like scared rabbits sitting in there, and
Mm,
people shaming and pointing fingers, and
mm.
it was just it got very uncomfortable.
And there's
And
enough shame already, Bill. Like there's so much shame with this. These guys are, you've seen it. I'm sure, they probably you've probably seen guys break down and cry and threaten to kill themselves and the whole all of it, because they're
oh,
so humiliated.
I'll tell you,
And then I'm not saying poor John or poor Guy. Like a lot of these guys are also predatory in a sense too. I get that, right? But
oh,
there's just so
absolutely,
much
yeah.
shame. Yeah,
Some of the most prolific serial killers are people that pick up
right.
street cross. Absolutely, there's
Yeah,
monsters out there, and
yeah,
but first time offenders, and most of the guys that we deal with are pretty decent human beings that deserve a second chance.
right.
Now, they come to our program
Hmm.
and they get rearrested.
Hmm.
It's mandatory 45 days in jail.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're giving them that much, but yeah, it whatever happens to them, they deserve. And I'll tell you another quick story if we have an extra minute, Paul.
yeah.
I talked,
We got I got another half hour. It's up to you.
okay,
It's
all
up to
right.
you. Yeah, go ahead.
I talked to a prosecutor in a neighboring county,
Okay.
the head of the city attorney's office for that particular city, which is in another county,
Hmm.
trying to have them send their arrestees to our program.
Okay.
So I sat in this prosecutor's office, and he let me talk about our program. As you can see, I can talk about this program. I could keep going for quite a while. And he listened very intently, very, very congenial, very nice guy. And I told him all the terrific things about our program. And then he looked at me and he said, "You know what, Bill? We like to prosecute people here in Orange County. We like to put people in jail here in it was in Orange
Right.
County, but I won't tell the city."
Okay. That's yeah.
So my response to him was, "Yeah, I understand. I like to prosecute people too, and I like to put people in jail also. That's what I signed up on the police department to do, is put bad people in jail." But I said, you know, Mr. Prosecutor, what's wrong with giving them an educational program that might change their behavior or might help them at no cost to the citizens here, might help you reduce your court calendar? What's wrong with giving people a chance at learning something? To this day, we still don't have the people from his city coming to our program. They're still prosecuting people and locking them in jail and whatever, putting their photos on the website that they were, you know, shaming them basically.
Right.
Anyway, so then let's get back to the program, Paul. So then we do have after the SAA guys, we had 2 survivors. One of our survivors been with us since day one. By the way, about 15% of the proceeds that we get from our program are donated to women's organizations around LA County to help young ladies get off the street.
Awesome. Yeah, because there's a fee, right? The Johns
Yeah.
have to pay it.
Yeah.
And the way it's set up too is they're arrested and they go to court and the judge says, okay, there's this route, go to jail and, you know, pay a fine, or is it drop the charges and go to the John school and you won't have a criminal record? Is that kind of the deal, or?
Yeah. In
Okay.
LA City, basically the way it works now for LA City arrests, Los Angeles City, because we have other counties, Santa Barbara County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County. And we've had people from other states fly in to attend our program. And we even had a guy zoom in from Paris not too long ago, attend Paris, France.
Wow, cool.
So basically in LA City, the way it works now is they go to court. The judge decides if the person is eligible for the diversion program.
Okay.
Say, okay, you go to the diversion program, gives them the information, they call, they register with us, we take care of it from there. They take our certificate, we provide an HIV test for everybody. We had a mobile testing unit right outside where we give the program. We've teamed up with AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
Okay.
Provides testing. They take a drop of blood, they get the results within 1 minute, and they give them a receipt for their
1
HIV.
minute?
1 minute, they get their
You can
results.
test for AIDS in 1 minute.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Right there in a mobile testing unit.
Okay.
So then they go back to court with our certificate with their HIV test. They do some community service. They might pay a small fine. And if they stay clean for 1 year, they don't reoffend, the case is dismissed. So no conviction,
Okay.
no probation for 3 years.
Gotcha.
No stay away order for the street that they were on. You could only
Right.
drive up and down that street going to work or going
Right.
to home. Otherwise, you can't go down this particular street where you were arrested or cited. So yeah, it helps the guys. I've had a lot of guys tell me. I had one guy, Paul. It was around Christmas time. This was about 5 years ago. He comes up to me halfway through the class. He says, Bill, he says, I work for the Los Angeles School District. I drive a bus and I have 5 kids at home. And he's looking me right in the eye. And he says, if I wasn't able to get this dismissed from my record, I'd lose my job. And then he looked at me and he said, you know what, Bill? I'd have probably killed myself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so anyway, so then we have Kathy, who comes in. She's a young lady, has an arrest record longer than your arm for prostitution. And she gives a very powerful presentation, sort of a streetwise type thing.
Yeah.
And tells the guys about the dangers and the effect that it's had on her. And then we used to have a young lady who was a survivor when her father was pimping her off at age 5.
Oh.
And her presentation, Paul, was so traumatic that literally 90% of the guys in the classroom were crying listening to this young lady.
I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that. Your own father pimping you out as a child. It's like,
Not to mention the fact that she was so distraught while reliving this, I finally had to tell her that, it's probably in her best interest not to be part of the program because it's too traumatic. It was just
Was she
horrific.
breaking down and
Oh,
crying
oh,
and everything as
sobbing,
well?
sobbing. It was horrible.
Yeah.
I do want to mention one other thing, Paul, about our program, because I know these young ladies are the real victims. Could
Yes.
I had a pimp. I had a pimp. I was working with two runaways, age 12 and 13,
Yeah.
that were in custody.
Okay.
And these girls were telling me about this pimp that they had that tattooed their inside of their lip
Mm-hmm.
and would make them go out on the street. And if they didn't fill their quota, he would beat them with a coat hanger, put them in a bathtub filled with ice, and they couldn't get out until all the ice had melted. And then the one little 12-year-old told me that she was awakened every morning by this pimp performing oral sex on her. Now,
Yeah.
this is somebody's daughter.
Yes.
And I'll tell you another thing, Paul, that most of the men don't realize that these girls, someone's mother, sister, or daughter, and I asked them straight up, how many have a mother? We all have mothers. How many have sisters? Some of us. How many have daughters? Some of us. Well, how would you like your mother, sister, or daughter having sex with a minimum of 60 guys a week, 240 men a month? And I've known some girls that are doing 20 to 25 sex acts with different men each day,
Yeah.
being pimped out by these guys, and
Yeah.
over 3,000 a year. I've never had one guy raise their hand. So I'd ask him, well, why would you want to do it to someone else's mother, sister, or daughter?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
that's a
right
great
there,
question.
that's a good question. Right there, you could sort of see the wheels turning in these guys,
Mhm.
in their minds. Yeah, you know what? Never thought of that. And I can't tell you on those critiques that are totally anonymous,
Yeah.
how many guys have apologized, not knowing what they do to these young girls,
Yeah.
their behavior, how it affects the community.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
our last guest speaker, we had a couple of female adults. One was a school teacher, one was involved heavily in the church down in South Los Angeles, and how they would talk about the used condoms being picked up by the kids on the school grounds, blowing up like balloons,
Mm.
and that's basically the program right there, Paul.
Yeah. Yeah. Just back to what you said about the someone's daughter or mother. So it's interesting because what you did is you brought the humanity into it. And when a man's soliciting a prostitute, he sees an object, right?
Yes.
Because you use objects and you love people. And that's one of the things that prostitution does to women is it objectifies them. But most all the men I've met have already been groomed into that by pornography for 5, 10, 15, 20 years anyway.
Yeah.
You can't pay a woman for sex unless you see her as an object, I don't think.
I would agree with that analysis. Yes.
Yeah, right? Because we use objects, we don't have feelings for them, right? And your way of explaining it brings the humanity back to it, and seeing the gears turn. And it's kind of like, did you ever wonder yourself, could you not figure this out on your own? Like, how can you not see that? Because like what you said is very straightforward. It's not exactly rocket science, right? But it's
You,
interesting how they really don't see it, right?
Paul, let me tell you something.
Ah,
I live in a very affluent community out in Southern California,
okay,
and I've been known to play a little poker.
okay.
So I'll go over to different friends, their houses.
Hmm.
You have 9 guys there, and we sit around and we play poker for 5 or 6 hours,
Okay,
once or twice a week, whatever it may be.
yeah,
Now, these guys that I play poker with, this one game that I was attending, the men there, successful businessmen living in multi-million-dollar homes, a wife that drives a Cadillac SUV
Yeah.
with 3 kids,
Mhm.
drives them to soccer, does all the stuff that parents do with their kids, and goes to the schools, pillars in the community.
Yeah.
And these guys, these aren't friends of mine, these are just acquaintances that I play poker with. These guys talk about going to Costa Rica and getting prostitutes for the weekend and spending 3 or 4 days in Costa Rica, and they're sitting there planning out their trip.
Yeah.
They didn't know what I do, and I sit there and I marvel at the fact that they would think that's appropriate. And these are pillars in the community. They've never been arrested,
Yeah.
and yet they're talking like it's nothing. Yeah, let's get, and we'll have prostitutes there for the whole weekend and get 3 or 4 girls there with us. And
Mhm.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. What fuels, like, from all the guys that you've talked to, the Johns, what is it that fuels that demand? Because at the end of the day, there wouldn't be prostitution if there wasn't a demand for the, let's call it the product, supply and demand. And the overwhelming 99% of people that pay for sex are men. What drives this seemingly insatiable demand for sex in men? Is it cultural? Is it entitlement? Is it being exposed to pornography? Is, like, where does this come from?
I wish I had the answer to that, Paul, but I will tell you this.
Okay.
I, in Southern California here, we have a lot of immigrants that come up from Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador. And I'm going to say about 30, maybe even 40% of the men who attend our program, and we have a Spanish interpreter for every program,
Oh, okay.
with headsets. When we do our live programs with the Zoom, we have breakout room for our Spanish speakers. And I have learned over the years that a lot of these young men, especially these immigrants from Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, their fathers introduced them at age 16 to prostitution, thinking that it was sort of, a manhood type thing or some type of macho thing. So
Mhm.
I don't have the answer what would drive someone other than being uneducated about the subject and fairly ignorant.
What do you think will ever achieve a society that's free from prostitution?
No, and I'll tell you, no, that never in our lifetime, Paul, unfortunately. But I'll tell you this: we're always going to have, unfortunately, in my opinion, and my opinion is just based on no scientific studies. I don't have a PhD. I can only talk about my experiences on the police department and running this program for almost 15 years and talking to 4,000 guys.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there will always be those young ladies that are coming out of those homes where the abuse, the sexual abuse, the mental, the physical, the substance abuse, the alcohol issues,
Mhm.
dysfunctional families. There's always going to be those young ladies, and there's always going to be those predators. We used to monitor the bus station down in downtown LA. We would have guys down there that would just watch the buses come in.
Okay.
Young girls get off the buses from wherever they come from, and the pimps used to hang out there to try to recruit. And we would sometimes put young female officers out there and work up a pimping case.
Right.
But we're always going to have those young ladies. The government will never be able to get in to those households and stop that abuse in time where these young ladies aren't going to be out on the streets selling their
Right.
body.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be men because as you might know, in Canada there, probably in the United States, one of the biggest topics of conversation or the coverage of the news media here in the States is about the Hollywood elites, a gentleman by the name of Weinstein, how they mistreated young ladies, young actresses for decades and raped them and took advantage of them. Until we get to a Me Too moment here in the United States regarding prostitution, and it has come to light over the past few years, more people are aware of human trafficking. It's a big topic here.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long time and a lot of education. We're never going to arrest our way out of it. That we don't have enough jails to put them in. And so I don't know what the answer is, but arresting people and putting them in jail or fining them and sending them on their way is not the way to go. It's education, my opinion.
It's a question from the law perspective of the law as well. We adopted what's called the Nordic model in Canada. I'm sure you're familiar with that, right? In it's going to be 7 or 8 years. I want to say 2018. So what that means basically is that women are no longer arrested for providing sex. So it's illegal to profit from the proceeds. So pimps, it's illegal to solicit. So the Johns, and basically the larger, if you're an organized crime or you're running a massage parlor, prostitution ring, those are the people that are liable. So is that the case now? Like I'm not up on the legal situation in California, because you mentioned several times about arresting the prostituted women themselves. So is that still the case? And what do you think about the Nordic model? Because it just seems to make sense to me that why are we criminalizing these abused and victimized and often drug addicted and pimped out women? Why are we criminalizing them and giving them a criminal record when we should be focusing on the demand? What do you think of that?
Well, I can tell you here that yes, the girls are still being arrested, still being charged with prostitution, but we have some outstanding organizations that deal with the young ladies, and they're diverted to these organizations. Their cases can be dismissed if they so desire. I'll tell you, Paul, when I brought up this John School to the command staff, I had 2.5 years left on the police department.
Okay.
And I told the command staff I had 2 programs that I proposed, the John School, and then I told them, if you turn me loose for the next 2.5 years of my career, I'll go to the Hollywood community, Oprah Winfrey and all the rich people, and I'll be able to talk them into providing a location. And I gave the example of calling it Oprah's house. Be right on the major stroll where prostitution has taken place in South Los Angeles for decades.
Right.
Decades and decades. And if you go out there right now, Paul, there's 50 to 100 scantily clad young ladies walking the streets.
On one street?
On one street.
Okay.
And I proposed that we get the Hollywood elites to provide funding for this Oprah's house. And then we, as law enforcement officers, would go out, make the arrest, put the girl in handcuffs in the back seat, and turn around and say, would you like to go to Oprah's house or would you like to go to jail? And the department didn't go for that. Anyway, but it was proposed.
Yeah.
But that's the way to go. That's what you need to do.
Yeah. Well, and the other interesting thing too is that since we passed this law, it's it's kind of a dead law in a sense because there are no John sweeps in Canada. All the major cities we have this law in place, hard fought for, where we're going to actually address the demand and go after the pimps and the Johns, and no one enforces it.
Well, we here in the United States, you know, there was some issues regarding the police departments. We had riots in the streets and talking of defunding the police.
Yeah,
So,
we heard all about that up here too. Yeah.
yeah, enforcement of those misdemeanor crimes was greatly reduced because there were other pressing issues
Yeah.
for law enforcement, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, but I will say this, LAPD, when I first joined the police department, never arrested the Johns back in the early 70s.
Mm.
In the later 70s, the American Civil Liberties Union filed a suit against the police department and the city because we were enforcing the prostitution laws against the females,
Right.
but we weren't enforcing it against the males. So the city decided to go along with that, and that's when we started arresting the Johns, and have since been doing that. And there were some years there where we were arresting 4,000 to 6,000 guys a year, and we could have arrested 20,000.
Yeah, I mean, there's a limit to the funding and the resources you allocate to that, right?
Exactly.
Well, we'll just one last question for you before we wrap up, because it's going on over an hour here. But what are you most proud of, Bill, looking back on your career? Because it sounds like you're pretty proud of this John School, but is it that or something else?
Well, I'll tell you, you know, to have the opportunity to work for a world-class police department that and meet so many dedicated professionals that risk their life on a daily basis, be involved in that. Not to mention, Paul, that I had a lot of fun. You know,
Fun.
every day, yeah. The job was fantastic. You know, every day was different.
Right.
There were never 2 days the same. You get in that police car, you put your shotgun in there, and you put all your equipment in, and you never know what's going to happen the next minute.
Right.
And the ability to help people, you know, it's just it was just a pleasure to be involved in providing service and protecting the people in the community. Made a lot of good arrests. There's a lot of bad people.
Right.
Put some pimps in jail for many, many years.
Right.
Just very fortunate. And to come out basically unscathed, although every once in a while I'll get a few nightmares. But other than that, I've been very fortunate to be part of that organization. And, you know, I'll mention this, back in the 80s, the LA Times here, the big newspaper in Los Angeles, did a survey of the people of Los Angeles on what they thought of the Los Angeles Police Department.
Okay.
And I want you to know that the minority communities, the African American and the Hispanic communities, gave us higher grades than the white community. We had like an 82% approval rating.
Wow.
During that time.
Yeah, you would never hear that in mainstream media. I'm not.
No, and obviously those percentages have probably changed to some degree, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But to be part of that, and you know, per capita, the Los Angeles Police Department had, for a big city, a major city in the United States, had the lowest per capita officers to population. So we were doing more with less and keeping the people safe within the community. So
Wow.
I was very fortunate, and I had a good long career and met a lot of nice people, and was able to help do my share.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your work, especially with helping to change the conversation about this issue of prostitution and paying for sex, and it's a complicated issue, and people everywhere have different perspectives on it. And I think that bringing that vision of a better way, has shown the power of education rather than simply brute force, penalizing people, and that it's hopeful, right, Bill? Because we can see the possibility for opening eyes and changing perceptions on this when someone brings the shared humanity into this and gives people an opportunity to think differently. I think there is just a lot of ignorance, like you said, around this, and the ignorance around the pretty woman myth, and the ignorance of like one of my interviews with a former sex buyer, he hates that movie Pretty Woman. He says it's one of the worst things that ever happened to him, because it literally taught him that prostitution is victimless crime, and you're actually helping people, you're helping these women out, by supporting their lifestyle. But thanks for doing that. I think it's important that we keep working to shift the conversation on this, and take the shame out of it. A lot of these men that I'm not making excuses, okay, but a lot of these men that I'm just speaking from the guys I work with, they have a lot of trauma and abuse and a lot of bad things in their life and they're just trying to cope with, right? And
Paul, you're absolutely
going
right.
to say something? Yeah.
Yes, our 4 SAA guys, they all talk about the issues they had growing up.
Yeah.
With dysfunctional families, alcohol, drugs, substance abuse.
Yeah.
One guy said his mother started having sex with him when he was 9. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And Paul, working with these guys, I know there's a lot of guys that are in desperate situations and really need the help. And I commend you for your efforts and work. And it's a slow process. There's a lot of men out there that obviously need some real help. And thank you for what you do.
Yeah. And thank you. I don't even live in the States, never mind LA, but thank you for your 35 years of service to your community. That's very admirable.
Thanks so much. My pleasure, Paul.
All right, we'll sign off for now. Take care, Bill.
Stay in touch.
Okay.